Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. And today we're going to go back to 2005. What did I do last summer? Well, in actuality, it was a little bit more than a summer. Starting in February, I began looking at a job in Idaho. By March 1, I was working in Idaho, and by Halloween, I was home from Idaho. So let's talk about what we really did that summer. I think you'll find it interesting. It pointed me towards aviation, so stay tuned. So we would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content. So let's jump in our flashback machine and let's go to 2005. And that was an interesting year. The year started off with our annual, we're going to go skiing in Colorado trip. A bunch of us have been doing that for like 10 years. We just go, we stay in a nice house, and we just ski our butts off for a week. And it's a lot of fun, and we get to catch up with folks. The nice thing about this year was that my birthday, my 50th, would fall on Mardi Gras Day, the day I was born. So we just put the trip together. Here's Rob and Chris Jones. But we all went to Colorado, and Luann wanted to arrange a surprise for me. So she had rented a truck and had entered us into the Mardi Gras parade in Breckenridge. So we had brought all of our costumes from real Mardi Gras, and we wore that on the back of our float, and it was really funny at the end of the ride where people mistook Luann and I for the king and queen of Breckenridge when we were just participants with our own float. But we all had a good time riding in the truck and throwing lots of prizes. We brought bags of throws from New Orleans that had been sent to me. We took them with us because we knew we would not be able to find them in the Breckenridge area. But anyway, that was 2005, and while we're on the ski trip, my birthday, in the middle of the slopes, I get a phone call. It's a company in Boise, Idaho, and they want to interview me. They've heard about some of my work I've done with European countries, and they want me to do it for them. Wednesday morning, I flew to Boise. I interviewed. I took the job on Thursday, and by March 1st, I was starting at a new job in Idaho. But anyway, we're going to get to all of that. Here was just the beginning of it with Mardi Gras of that year in 2005. February 8th. Enjoy the pictures of Luann and I all decked out to go ride in the back of a truck and throw things to people to celebrate Mardi Gras. So now let's move on with what happened the rest of that year. Now you know the motivation. Stay tuned. So I jumped into a U-Haul and I went across the country dragging my motorcycle and my little rusted out Honda shitbox, and I moved into the corporate apartment, and from there I began working my normal magic. And here's the basic story. I was hired as the chief architect of software for Extended Systems Incorporated in Boise, Idaho. They made 7 different phone models, including the BlackBerry, the Palm, etc. This was the early days of the smartphone, and what they did was they had a product called OneBridge, and what it allowed you to do is on your phone get your email, your text, your phone conferences, your schedule, just like your corporate Outlook. But anyway, we improved it, and as all things will go, I was so good at my job that I was such a success at redesigning the software, I got myself out of a job. But that was a good thing, and we're going to get into all the stuff that led right up to that. So working on the software, living in the corporate apartment, I don't like living in corporate apartments. You have noisy neighbors. My bedroom looked right out on the parking lot. But anyway, we ended up buying a house in Boise. We also ended up buying 10 acres on the Payette River with unlimited water rights. You can imagine what that's worth out in the high mountain plains. But anyway, the nice thing about buying the house was it gave me a better place to live, and it gave me something to do to help think about the problems that we were trying to resolve and redesign in the new software with the upcoming new products that we were going to be releasing. And I work best when I'm doing something that is physical, like building a deck on a house or working in the yard, something that's mindless, just work, and it allows my mind to go off and build the software structure and test it out in my head so that I know that I'm going to have a good build. And you really have to think about all that when you're doing it. And so I bought the house and we bought the property. Now the property was the easy one. We bought the land, and then I just paid money to have a contractor come in and put down a well, and then we had a septic system put in because we were going to build on the property. It had 1,800 feet that we could use for a runway right along some railroad tracks, and again, it was on the Payette River, so we were going to have a waterfront house. And we were planning on doing that, but then we realized that with building and everything else out in the country, it was going to be a while before we could get the house constructed, even though we now had everything ready to go. So Luann came out and we decided, went for a motorcycle ride around Boise. We spotted a house, we stopped, we looked at it, we looked at the horses in the back, and we saw a for sale sign, and then, believe it or not, a week later we owned it. But that house gave me the opportunity to put a deck on the back, a deck on the front, to do the furnace work, the gas line work, do a lot of work on the house, which freed up my mind for being able to solve the hard software problems I was solving every day at work. So we're going to talk about some of the work here on the house. It's going to be kind of like my home improvement channel today. But the nice thing about all this is while we were there, I was fully embracing, because Luann and I were serious about moving out west. We'd been looking for places to go. We've been talking to folks. Matter of fact, during this time frame, we even flew my Tiger at the end of May of that year all the way out to Idaho, and all that was in that airplane was me and all of my tools for working on the house. I mean, it was literally full of tools. And we put them to good use. And the nice thing is that we did that in May, when we decided that we weren't going to be able to build the house. We were going to have to buy one and remodel. And that worked out well. But we also went to Johnson Creek, and that was a fly-in in my Tiger, coming across the country with a bunch of tools. And now I have a Tiger, so I can fly over to Oregon, and I can fly up to Washington. I can go to Cody, Wyoming in 2 hours. It was really nice having an airplane out there, and I was actually entertaining the idea of taking over regional director for the then AYA in that region from Jeff Davis. But as you'll see, aviation began to play a lot more of my life. And in September, you might have remembered that year when I had my dreaded dead stick landing. Life gave me a bunch of lemons. Engine out over, soybean fields in Illinois. But that's okay. I got the airplane down. We rebuilt the engine. I took those lemons and I made lemonade, and now I run Yankee Aviation, a Grumman specialty shop. So when life hands you something bad, do something good with it. But anyway, we bought the house and we bought the land, and now let's talk about some of the specific projects. There are not going to be any pictures of the land other than a couple of nice photos I took out there. But here, stay tuned. Let me add this final thing about the move. When you go to Boise, Idaho, you're not going because of the hot dating life. I went to work, get this job done, and set up a move there. It just didn't work out that way. But we're going to go on now and jump into the decks and everything else we did. Let me also add that during this time frame, I was also traveling to Europe 3 times that year. I was going up to Toronto every week. I was a very busy guy, but that's okay. Like I said, there's nothing else to do in Boise. I might as well have some fun and do my job well. So now let's get on to the projects that we did on the property. So the nice thing about living in Boise, Idaho, is that when you call a contractor, they're going to tell you when they're going to bring the lumber out, and they deliver a little extra for you. And the other nice thing is that inspectors and all, when they tell you they're going to be there at 4:10, that's when they're going to be there at 4:10. They're not going to be early. They're not going to be late. But anyway, we built this deck. We had the lumber delivered, and then in my spare time, if you can believe it, I constructed this deck on the back of the house. First off, it was going to be right up against the irrigation canal, which is the coolest spot on the property, and the house was definitely screaming for some ventilation. It had very few windows that opened, no screens in the doors, and so we were going to be updating a lot of stuff on the house. But there me of planning where the deck is going to be, and now I began cutting out that wall right there, and I ended up putting a deck. And now Ron and Fran Levy stayed with us after Sacramento right before we had the deck door in, and all they said was that, I really need to put a deck door in there, and we did. But we got the deck door in, and that really opened up the house in terms of breathing, and now we could concentrate on the other projects that we were going to be doing. And just to highlight, we're going to do a deck on the front of the house, we're going to work on the gate, but stay tuned, we're going to have some more fun. Now that we had a nice deck in the back of the house, we wanted a nice deck on the front of the house, and that's what we proceeded to do. And the nice thing that we weren't expecting was that when we built the deck out on the front of the house, it was in the nice shade of the few trees that we had, but we also had a great view of Hill Road. You could sit on your deck and you see cars coming from one way, and you could see them coming from the other, and you could sit on the deck and hear the conversations of people as they rode by in their car. It was kind of nice having that deck. So when we got the deck all finished, we put a ledger board in and we put rails on it, but we took a window out and we put it it as a door so that now we had an easy way to go from the upstairs hallway right onto the front deck. So this pretty much accomplished having the house being able to breathe and ventilate. We had a door now on the front and a deck on the back. So now we could concentrate on all the other fun stuff like getting a new gas line put in for a new furnace, getting our old heating oil system out and getting a new natural gas system in. So we had a lot more projects to do, but this again is what I did in my spare time, just building a deck and working on the house because I had nothing else to do, and it accomplished something, gave me something to do with my hands, and it freed up my mind for all the work that I was trying to do. But anyway, we really did like that house, and we were really disappointed when we had to sell it. And again, once we had the deck going in place, we realized it was time to get onto the fence of the property. We added a door. This is the door from the inside, and then we also did the same things, allow people to look at it from the outside. So we had a nice ventilated house, and now let's move on to the gate system. Now, doing the gate, I bought a gate off of Craigslist and had all the pieces, assembled them and checked them and cleaned them. There's the gate. We had to take all the screen off of it because we were going to go ahead and put cedar planking on it to match the rest of the fence, and that's what we began to do. We began to putting in all the transverse rails on the fence. We eventually got the fence up there. Then we went to Home Depot, bought a bunch of the cedar dog-eared panels, and we began to put them on. And when we got them all on the board, then we stained it to match the rest of the fence. But now the fence project in itself was when Luann came out for Labor Day weekend, and that's all we did. 1,800 feet of fence, pressure washed and cleaned. So stay tuned for that little project. So for Labor Day weekend, Luann flew out and we pressure washed all the fencing. Now again, there's 1,800 feet of fencing both sides all around the property. We pressure washed it and then we stained it with Bear Cedar 401 stain. It looked pretty nice, but again, it was a full 2 days of work. One full day of pressure washing, one full day of staining. But when it was done, the deck and the fences and all looked really, really good. And the house was now up for sale. And then we started on the next project was to have a gas line brought in from the street under our fencing, and they bulldozed it underneath, and we had gas brought in, and then we had a new furnace installed. The old oiled furnace was coming out. The house was built with no insulation, and needless to say, we were going to want to stay warm in the winter and to add air conditioning for the first time to the house other than having a window unit in one of the bedrooms. So anyway, those were the projects that were just coming along, and they kept us fairly busy, but it was making the house very nice. And as you saw that final picture of the deck, it looked really good. And then, you know, just when you think that September, which is the time of year that we're doing all this work on the house with the yard cleaning and everything, that wow, what a full September. And then at the very end of September, I had my dreaded dead stick landing on the way bringing the engine back on the airplane to Ohio to have it overhauled. And of course, you know, the airplane stayed there and I came back. We came back on the 15th and we finished the gate. We closed on the house on the 29th, and then Luann and I packed up and we headed home to Ohio. So that, folks, is a pretty quick look at what we did in 2005. And the nice thing about all that was we were serious about aviation. We were looking for property that we could have our own runway, and we found all of that. We had to give it all up. But with the dreaded dead stick landing, here's the lemons that life is giving me. So we took that, we rebuilt the engine. I got my A&P the next month. I had all my logbooks with all my stuff. I went into the FSDO and said, I'd like to get an A&P license. And they wanted me to go to a school, and I went, I don't need to go to school. I went to the School of Hard Knocks. But you can get your A&P, and I encourage you that if you are mechanically inclined to go ahead and do it. We have a shortage of A&Ps. But anyway, I started Yankee Aviation at Butler County, Moraine, and Middletown of that year, and it worked out pretty good, and I'm still doing it and still having a good time. So when you work for yourself, you never have to go to a job, it seems. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for this little skip down memory lane and how I really got pushed in the aviation direction with no room for error here. But anyway, we hope you found all this useful and informative. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day flying your Grumman. And in addition, as a little treat, about 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing web work and other stuff, here's my cat coming down, playing with a mouse and meowing and just having a good time with me in the wee hours of the night. So I thought I'd throw this into you as a little treat. Y'all please enjoy.